Well, Colorado's Lieutenant Governor, Dianne Primavera, is also a film producer. Her most recent work, called Nothing Safer, spotlights the K-9 training program in Colorado's prisons.
Film just won Best Heritage Short at the Pueblo Film Festival. Here's a clip.
The reason I came back to prison, and I think a lot of people that come back to prison and are part of the recidivism problem, it's because we're living an inauthentic life to our values. And I don't know, if I had never been to prison, would I have become a dog trainer? I never knew what I really wanted to do in my life. I knew I wanted to work with animals, but I didn't know what it was. And I found through this last decade of my life that's what I want to give back. I want to give that to kids. I want to give it to customers with their dogs. I want to give it to my own child. Yeah, I want to take everything that I've learned with the dog program and take it with me. Put it in my little training pouch.
Wow, purposeful. Well, joining us now to talk about the film are Lieutenant Governor Primavera and Director Cynthia Cazañas-Garin. Thank you both so much for being here. Can you talk to us a little bit about how this film came together? Because when you first sat down, Cynthia, you said this was a group effort.
Well, I had learned about the K-9 training program at the Department of Corrections when I was in the legislature. And so I took my dogs there for training, and the recidivism rate was 100% with my dogs. And so I went back and went to alumni classes, so I got to know some of the prisoners really well. One of the people who's in the movie, Bree, was the person who trained my dog. I got to know her really well, taking my dogs back for classes, and I always wondered whatever happened to her because I'd lost track of her. One day my daughter had moved into a house, and I was walking my dogs, and I walked by this woman, and she said, that's a beautiful Airedale. And I said, thank you. And she goes, is her name Minnie? And I said, Minnie? How would you know Minnie? She said, I trained your dog when I was in prison.
Wow.
So she's living 2 doors away from my daughter. So we would go for walks, and I learned a lot about the struggle she had, things she had learned at the Department of Corrections that helped her, but some of the little struggles she had trying to stay on the outside and not go back to prison. So I thought it was a great story to tell, and so I came up with the idea. We worked with our film office at the state, and then we hired Cynthia to be the director and producer.
Cynthia, what was it that stood out to you about the relationship between the women who are doing the training here and the animals that they're training?
So first of all, when I was introduced with this idea, I obviously liked it. I fell in love with it, but I thought I was going to make a film about dogs in prison. I didn't know there was something beyond there. So in my research, when we started talking back and forth, that's when I realized that this is a film about how the dogs are bridges, right? How they connect and they give second chances to those people in prison. And at the same time, they get a second chance as well, since some of these dogs are going to be euthanized. Aww. Some of them come from shelters, so they are rescue dogs most of the time. So I got very interested in the idea on how these dogs were serving a social purpose, if you would. And at the same time, the training of the dogs, these dogs end up in houses with people with disabilities, with children. So it's just a win-win. The more I learned about this story, the more I fell in love with it. I was really honored to be able to tell this story. And like Lieutenant Governor Dianne Primavera said, it was her idea, and I really couldn't have done it without her, because I think the most powerful thing about this film is the story itself. Yeah. It's just on its own.
It's altruistic. There's just that one clip. You could see the emotion and that woman's story, her testimony, so to speak. So, Lieutenant Governor, I can only imagine through your work all that you're exposed to. And why this, though? What was it about this story that you wanted to amplify?
Well, for one thing, I've seen it and I've looked at it from different levels. One of the things that I wanted to amplify was the great work that Darlene and Michelle on the prison staff do to rehabilitate the prisoners. I also wanted to make sure that people understand that everybody isn't in with life without parole. So these people who are incarcerated are going to get out, and we want to make sure that they have the supports they need to succeed. We don't want them going back. And the K-9 training program helps with that. It teaches them the same things they teach their dogs, they learn themselves. They learn, she mentions it in the film. I teach patience, I learn patience. I teach them how to greet people correctly, I learn how to greet people correctly. So I just want to highlight the fact that behind the headlines there's humanity in prison. and that it's really important that we help the prisoners succeed on the outside.
Cynthia, we often talk about prisons, and like it almost seems like people kind of disappear when they go there, right? You know, like they disappear from our mind's eye. What was it about highlighting these folks? Was it hard to focus on people who were in that place where they seemed to disappear?
Yes, from a filmmaking point of view, it's really hard to get people to open up and unravel these parts of their life that they don't necessarily want to talk about anymore, mistakes that they made that led them to where they are. So it was really hard. That was a challenge, and I had to give them that comfort, that level of comfort, to get them to tell me what I needed to know. And I said, you can say anything you want, you're not pressured, but the more you say, the more people are going to identify with your story and understand what led you there, because we realized, and this is something that the Lieutenant Governor and I talked a lot in the beginning when we were developing the idea of the film, like the script. It's like sometimes women are victims themselves. And you learned that, and you talked about it in the film too, of like how sometimes they were traumatized as in their childhood. They come from very difficult pasts, and that kind of led them to where they are. And I wanted to highlight that part about women, and it was a challenge too, because I didn't want to open up the film saying that they were in prison. I wanted to open up as like, we are human beings, and I want you to get to know me first, and then I reveal that I was actually in prison. So I didn't want people to make judgments right away.
Beautiful.
It really is. Well, the film, again, is called Nothing Safer. It's streaming right now through Rocky Mountain PBS.
Lieutenant Governor Dianne Primavera and Director Cynthia Garin, thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thank you.